And a remarkable story unfolding. A U.S. airplane, an A320 Airbus, heading from LaGuardia to Charlotte, taking off about 3:16, got up to just taking off 6 minutes into the flight, about 3,200 feet above the ground. And when something happened, we believe some sort of a flock of birds, perhaps geese, had hit, and you can see just the back wing, the tail wing of that U.S. Airways jet with 146 passengers, 5 crew members on board. We do not know if all the passengers are out yet. We have one report. Source of mine at the FDNY says they believe all the passengers are out. We would hope so. Shannon Sohn has been on top of this in Newscopter 7. Shannon, we understand you have some new information.
Yeah, Bill, we can certainly add some information at this point. The towers are telling us that they do, in fact, believe that everyone got out of this aircraft okay, which is absolutely amazing. But let's give you a little bit of information about what was probably going on inside the fuselage of that aircraft when this all happened. As you mentioned, they took off out of LaGuardia. They were 6 minutes into their flight when they encountered some sort of problem. Initial reports are a bird strike. We, too, here in Newscopter 7 are hearing reports of a flock of seagulls in the area that may have caused this catastrophe. But keep in mind, the pilot was aware of it as well. And so whatever happened, the pilot knew what was going on, and he took the proper safety precautions. So what that means for the people inside that aircraft at the time that the bird struck or whatever happened is that they knew what was coming down the line. So the pilot knew what to do. He controlled the landing into the water. Unfortunately, it was the only place that he could go. But also keep in mind, with an Airbus like this, the worst parts of the flight are on takeoff and on landing. That is when the engines are working the hardest. That is when the plane is doing the most work. So as everyone has mentioned, that is the worst time to have something happen, and that's probably why this ended the way it did. But again, the pilots handled the situation. They landed it into the water, and from what the towers are telling us, it looks like everyone got out. Now, you can imagine how intense it was.
Shannon, explain to us what we think, I think we're seeing, and you have a better view of it up there. It looks like there are tow lines from these New York waterway ferries, which, by the way, you'll recall in 9/11 did a heroic job, and they plunged into action here as well very quickly. And who knows how many lives they saved by the quick action. But it looks like there are tow lines, and they're trying to get that to shore before the whole body goes underneath.
Yeah, I think that they're just trying to keep it afloat for the most part. The current is fairly strong here today, and it is actually moving southbound in addition to the fact that it is attached to these tows. But the aircraft itself, because of the current, is moving southbound. So they're just sort of trying to keep it afloat.
Jeff Pegues is at the scene. Jeff, what can you tell us about the rescue operation now? And we are told everyone's off. Are they all away from that waterfront now?
Well, it's hard for us to see, Bill, exactly what's happening with the rescue effort. We are, though, at the Circle Line Pier, and this has become a staging area for some of the rescue crews behind us. And it is also where many witnesses are gathering as well. I have one with me here. His name is Angel. He tells me that he saw the plane coming down over the Hudson. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me exactly what you saw.
From my window, I saw the plane was coming down below the radar zone. I thought it might be a terrorist attack or something, but the plane looked like it had difficulty trying to get off.
Trying to gain altitude.
Trying to gain altitude, but as it got closer to the water, I saw the pilot. He made a last-ditch effort to try to gain altitude, and he did that for a few seconds, and then the plane just came down and plopped on the water. Had he not done that, he would have damaged the fuselage.
I know the plane was coming down. Was this a relatively soft landing, considering the speed that the plane was traveling at?
Had he not made that last-ditch effort, it would have not been a soft landing. He would have damaged the fuselage and endangered the lives of those people on the plane.
And you were telling me also that you tried to call 911, but
I tried to call 911, and I tried to call the news channels, but all the phones were blocked. I couldn't get through.
Angel, thank you very much. Angel telling us that he saw the plane coming down over the Hudson. Again, I'm at one of the staging areas here on the west side. Traffic obviously has let up here as rescue officials have moved in. They're blocking the traffic, obviously, as they move their activity here. Back to you in the studio.
We've got Martin Rizzotti, who is on the phone right now. He was an eyewitness to the crash. Martin, tell us what you saw.
Diane, I was looking outside the window, and I happened to see the plane extremely low, and my first impression was that I thought there would be another attack on 9/11. As I looked out the window, I see the plane come down without any landing gear, and this pilot miraculously brought this plane down with it was just unbelievable how he brought this plane down.
Martin,
I didn't see, yes.
Was it your sense he was controlled in his landing, that he was controlling the landing?
Oh, absolutely. He was controlling that landing. I didn't see any landing gear. All I know is he brought this plane down. Him and his guardian angel brought that plane down. And I am beside myself because I see these things on TV thinking it was some sort of fictional thing, and then when I actually see it, it's just unbelievable. It's so stressful. But this pilot is amazing how he brought that plane down, and I didn't see any crash or anything like that. I didn't hear any explosion, but he brought this plane down. I didn't see any landing gear come down. He just brought this plane down as if the plane was going to be able to land on the water.
So, Martin, what was it like when it did come down on top of the water? Did it glide?
There was a splash. There was a splash, and then I saw a splash, and then it went out of my view because I'm on 68th Street and Riverside Boulevard, and I think the plane where it is now is somewhere in the 50s or the 40s.
So Martin, you don't have a sense of how long it kind of sat on the surface of the water before it started going down?
No, I don't. All I know is that I tried calling 911, but they didn't pick up because I know they needed help. I went downstairs to the concierge to see if maybe they can get through, but then I called your control room, and your control room said you already had the news story. But it's just amazing how this pilot brought that plane down like he knew what he had to do. He had to land that plane on the water.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely miraculous how that plane did not explode when it landed.
This is really encouraging news, Martin, because, we don't know if how many survivors, if there are any survivors, but it does sound much more hopeful with what you're describing.
They were standing on the wings, and these ferries were taking them over.
So that's again sounding very hopeful, Martin. We like hearing that. So thank you, Martin Rizzotti,
right,
a witness to it. Thank you so much.
And good luck.
Okay, I want to add a couple bits and pieces of information because again we keep getting more information. Government officials say 2 engines of the plane that went down in the Hudson River were disabled by a bird strike. The Federal Aviation Administration is saying that the U.S. Airways Flight 1549 had just taken off from LaGuardia en route to Charlotte. We've got Dave Evans, who is on the scene right now, and I understand we can get a live shot with him, so let's take it down to Dave. Dave?
Dinah, for the last 10 or 15 minutes or so, we've been seeing this plane basically towed down the Hudson River south here along the Hudson. And just a couple of minutes ago, I talked with John Roca. He is a photographer with the Daily News, and we'll try to get that taped for you in just a minute. But he tells me that about probably 15 or 20 minutes ago, he saw several of the people who were passengers apparently on this flight, about 15 or 20 people who came out on top of the plane as it floated there in the Hudson. And then those people were brought by police dinghies. They all had their life vests on them. He said they appeared to be fine. They were shaken up, of course, by what happened, but he said he didn't see anyone injured in that first dinghy that came, the police dinghy, from that flight, and were brought then to about 42nd Street, just north of where we are right now. Right now we are at 34th Street, but for the last 15 minutes or so, we've seen the plane basically towed down the Hudson River. No one is on the plane now that we see. We assume that all of the passengers have been brought now up at 42nd Street here along the Hudson River, and miraculously, according to the photographer from the Daily News who I talked to just a few minutes ago, they all appear to be fine.
We go up to Shannon Sona. Shannon, do you hear us?
I hear you, Bill.
Okay. We understand they are trying to tow this plane to dock. So there's got to be something attached to that big tugboat, right?
Oh, absolutely. It looks to us like they are trying to tow it. It almost looks like they're pushing it towards the Jersey side here. You can see the tail still sticking out on the left side of your picture, and right around where the police boat is, that is where the nose of the airplane is still sticking out of the water. And to give you an idea of how large this aircraft is, we all know it's an Airbus 320 at this point. Just to give you some stats on the aircraft, it has a wingspan of 111.2 feet, and that is all underwater. There's one wing, the left wing, sticking out above the water, which you can't see right now because of the tugboat in front of it, 123 feet long. That's how big this aircraft is, and so much of it at this point is underwater. And as we mentioned, 146 passengers on board. They got out quickly. Now keep in mind as well that this guy had just taken off out of LaGuardia 6 minutes before impacting into the Hudson River, and that means he was still on LaGuardia's radar, and he let LaGuardia know that there was a problem, so everyone knew exactly where he was and pretty much the position that he was going to wind up in. So emergency crews were probably standing by for something to happen almost before the crash site actually happened. So they certainly got help out here fast. We're just going to widen this picture out for a minute to give you an idea of how many boats are in this water. We've got helicopters overhead that were quickly there to look for anyone that might be in the water. We've got Circle Line boats. We've got police boats. Everyone that you can imagine came and responded to the scene quickly. But it sounds like they went into the water and were able to get out onto the wings. Most of the passengers that we have seen coming off of the aircraft aren't even wet, and that is really key today because the weather is cold and that water is absolutely frigid.
We've got Jessica Taff on the phone right now, and she is with someone who got off that plane, right, Jess?
And we just got off safe. And
Jess, are you there? Jessica?
Just walked through water. And
where's your wife?
It was filled up probably to our waist by the time we got off, and it was going down a lot quicker than that. I mean, you can see now there's no plane in the Hudson. So,
Where were you in the plane?
I was 22A. I was far back.
Did you go up with the front door?
Yeah, we were supposed to go out through the back. So, but I don't know. It was organized chaos. So,
How many exits were used?
I don't even know, man. We were just looking to be calm and walk in a straight line and make sure the women. I think we were trying to make sure as hard as we could to make sure that the women got off. So, man, it was.
What did you say?
I'm just happy to be alive. To be honest, I don't know what else to say. So thank you.
Did you step into a raft?
Yeah. Well, we kind of walked in, jumped in, or stepped into a raft, and
Okay.
I'm 31 years old, man. Yeah, it's Kolodjay.
It sounds like what we're listening into, by the way, if you're listening into this, is one of the passengers on board is speaking to a number of media members out there, and he is describing what it was like. He was in seat 22A, and that was his description of what was happening as they were trying to get people out of the plane.
But we also have Jim Hoffer here, who's going to take us into what may have happened, and we were talking about these birds here.
Well, the bird strike, it looks like, that at least preliminarily, that is exactly what happened here. That's what we're hearing. We've confirmed it through air traffic control that indeed that's what the pilot radioed just prior to the crash. The question here is how severe was the strike in terms of did it take out one engine? Did it take out two engines? Or that's the big question. If it's a multiple bird strike, then they can be catastrophic. They're rare. And oftentimes they happen more in smaller planes than they do larger ones.
Jim, the information we got was that it did disable two engines. Now, very unusual.
It's unusual, but that is indeed why that plane is now in the water, clearly. Because had one engine only been damaged, that pilot would have been able to bring that plane down, probably even circle around and take it back to LaGuardia safely, or even Newark, which is closer at that point.
If a pilot loses two engines, what kind of predicament does that put him into?
Well, he's got to decide where to bring the plane down at that point.
Immediately,
at that
right?
point,
right.
He had no other options.
He probably had seconds to decide whether he could get that plane and take it back to the airport or bring it down somewhere. And the fact that he had presence of mind to bring that plane down over the water is probably why so many people are alive today.
Just to recap, again, it was a U.S. Airways plane that crashed into the Hudson. It was coming from LaGuardia Airport on its way to Charlotte, North Carolina. 146 passengers on board, 5 crew members, and again, it was an Airbus 320 plane.
Coming from LaGuardia. The pilot really did a fantastic job. We're Shannon Sona's in Newscopter 7. We also have on our set Dr. Jay Adlersberg, because those passengers, 146 passengers, 5 crew members, all were told getting out in time, but 42-degree weather, Jay, with a wind chill factor, pretty close to zero with the wind and the cold right now, according to Lee Goldberg, or almost in the single digits. How long can someone survive in 42-degree water?
Well, unfortunately, Bill, I think that what we saw as the survivors of the crash entered into emergency care was that very little of their clothing appeared wet. So I think these people were fortunate enough to get out of the fuselage of the plane onto the wing, onto a boat without getting wet. So they were exposed perhaps to the single-digit wind chill type temperatures of the air.
But in dry clothes.
In dry clothes. Now, if they had entered the water is about 42 degrees Fahrenheit, as I understand. Yeah. And at that temperature...
It could have been a different scenario there
absolutely,
altogether.
Completely, because people in water of that temperature survive about 30 minutes to an hour before they begin to lose consciousness or to act irrationally, etc. Fortunately, nothing like that happened. This is that's the worst case scenario, and it doesn't appear that anybody, so far as we know, was in the water. But I'm sure we have more information to get on that.
These are pictures right now. Passengers being brought to shore. Passengers brought to shore. And they are looking good right there. That is a good sight to see. So they look like they're doing good. Again, there's no fatalities reported. This could turn out to be just quite an amazing miracle that all of these passengers may perhaps be okay. Surely they are shaken up. They must be very frightened. But as you heard from Martin just a short while ago, this was a miraculous landing by that pilot after what appears to have been a bird strike. He landed that plane on the Hudson River, and now what you're seeing here is passengers, raw video of these passengers who are off that plane and being taken to be checked out, to obviously warm up, but these are passengers from U.S. Airways Flight 1549. They were headed to Charlotte, and then their plane went down in the Hudson River. And you can look at this gentleman here. They are surely shaken up. That man smiling, thankful, obviously, to be alive. Hallelujah for him.